So after 4 years, it's safe to say that Invincible is a good show. Is it perfect? Absolutely not. It has a lot of problems, and many of those problems have been discussed thoroughly, so there's no point in discussing those. But overall, I think it's safe to say that despite it having some everlasting issues, it still manages to not only be one of the best animated superhero shows currently streaming, but one of the best superhero shows in general. And I personally love it. I've loved this show ever since I watched it for the first time way back in 2021 while I was still in high school. And I'm glad that this was one of those shows that I watched from back then that didn't end up being one of those that I watched solely because it had a bunch of gore. Because as the trope goes, when you're an edgy teenager, a thing with a lot of blood, sex, gore, and swearing is in the danger of being depicted as, I'm 14 and this is deep. Thankfully not Invincible. The show tackles a lot of serious topics in a very mature way, and since I first watched it while I was in high school, I've been able to somewhat grow up with Mark and the rest of the cast, and feel really connected to the show on a much deeper scale emotionally. But enough dick sucking this show with a twisting hand motion. I'm here to talk about the main problem that's been circulating online recently, and it's an issue with the show since day one, and that's the animation problem. Now, despite the show being high quality in almost every aspect, the main problem the show has faced has always been the visuals. Now before I continue, I have to state one thing. Season 1 is the bottom of the barrel when talking about the animation for this show. I don't know where the love for the first season's animation came from, but no. Just no. The first season has only 2 scenes where it looks good. The first is the Omni-Man on Thraxa, and the second is when he's being shot with a nuclear laser from space, and even then it reverts back to the quality it had all throughout the season afterwards. Now I'm not saying that the entirety of season 1 looks bad, but some of the worst animation in that season genuinely looks like a Newgrounds cartoon from 2003. And if I may add my personal opinion that absolutely no one asked for, those 2 scenes don't even really look that good compared to the highlights of later seasons. Like, the scene in the Flaxen dimension is nice, but the 3D honestly reminds me of the 3D scenes from Battle of Gods. Compared to the slick smoothness of how the conquest scenes are animated in later seasons, it arguably, in my humble and wanted opinion, looks better than the Flaxen scene. I'm mainly bringing that up because for some reason people have been saying recently that the animation in season 1 is some forgotten gold that the animation studio lost because they have to fit their production into a yearly release. And while it would be nice to have a much wider time frame to help improve the animation on the show, the series has always struggled in that department. However, I don't necessarily think the show solely suffers animation-wise due to not having a wide production time, although I do think that is a major factor. The main reason I suspect the visuals of the series have struggled over the years is because of the overwhelming usage of celebrity cast members over professionally trained voice actors. Now, I know that's also an overly expressed complaint of the show, that it uses mainly well-known movie stars and live-action actors from popular television series as its primary cast, but after watching season 4, not only was this problem still prominent, but they actively did something that genuinely made me feel offended, and I'm not even a voice actor. How would you guys feel if I told you that Troy Baker is in this show? Yes, Troy motherfucking Baker. The legendary video game and anime voice actor who's played some of the most iconic characters in all of gaming, from Joel Miller, Booker DeWitt, Sam Drake, Pagan Min, Higgs Monaghan, Ocelot, and even frickin' Batman and the Joker. Yeah. What if I told you he's in the show? For less than 5 minutes of actual dialogue. He plays Nolan's dad, who's then quickly killed off, and some random space trooper. That's it? That's all you've got? The most prolific video game voice actor who's not only responsible for some of the most organic and emotionally magnificent performances in all of gaming, but is also a pioneer in video game voice acting and really digital performing in general, and anime dubbing, since he's also been involved in that realm of acting since the early 2000s with the original Fullmetal Alchemist, gets resorted to just some background character in the most popular animated show currently. You do the gaudy award-winning GOAT like that? This isn't even the worst of their offenses against actual voice actors either. Frank Welker, the voice of Megatron, and Fred from the Transformers franchise and Scooby-Doo respectively, also gets the Baker special by having only 2 scenes with actual dialogue. And even then, the scenes in question are only there to set up Thrag, who's voiced by Lee Pace, which I will probably cover in a potential future video. I know they probably only thought of having him for the not so subtle nod of him being opposite of Peter Cullen, who voices Theodus in the show, who, for the normies in the room, also plays Optimus Prime in Transformers. But you couldn't give Argyle a little more to work with, at least for Frank Welker's sake? This is honestly the biggest problem with the show. The fact that out of all the cast members, they only have 4 professionally trained VAs, those being Eric Bauza, who plays Ian Sinclair, taking over Ezra Miller after Ezra Millard, Clancy Brown, who plays Damien Darkblood, and General Craig, who I swear the only difference I can find between the two is that Darkblood has some kind of accent. Other than that, all I hear is Mr. Krabs. Phil Lamar, best known for Samurai Jack, is in the show as Lucan, a pretty forgettable recurring Viltrumite villain. And Greg Griffith, who's best known for playing Azula in the Last Airbender series, and Mandy from The Grim Adventures of Bill and Mandy. Although she mainly plays Monster Girl and Shrinking Ray, she basically plays every other background lady in the show, and it's incredibly distracting hearing her voice constantly because there are only so many voices a VA can go through before they all start sounding alike. Not every voice actor is Mel Blanc. Instead of handing some of the important roles to VAs that would arguably better suited for them, they hand them over to well-known celebrities for no reason other than star power. Additionally, with all the star power that they potentially spend all their money on, they don't have any money left for more VAs to play minor characters, so they just tell the ones they have to pump out as many voices as they can. I can understand them doing this in the first 2 seasons, mainly because they had a lot more to prove back then. But even then, the overwhelming use of celebrity voices over professional voice actors is just confusing to me. Like, going back to the similar format of the example I used earlier, how many people know that Kate Mara was in this show? Yeah, the same Kate Mara from House of Cards and that really creepy teacher from that one Hulu miniseries. She also played Sue Storm in Fantastic, but we don't really talk about that. Yeah, she's in the show as Powerplex's wife. She gets less than 10 minutes of actual dialogue. With the examples I just brought up, this show is making 2 different offenses against VAs. 1, they don't hire enough VAs so they have the same ones voice 15 different background characters each. And 2, they don't have enough faith in VAs to pick up some of the bigger roles and or just think those roles should go towards bigger name actors. Now, of course, I'm over-exaggerating, and I understand the decision for the main cast to be voiced by mainly celebrities. And I will also mention, of course, that just because some of the voices are well-known actors, that doesn't mean they can't voice act. Some of the celebrity cast members they got are genuinely great voice actors who either did voice work before and are able to enhance their skills more and more with this show, or are already experienced voice actors and managed to book the role of a lifetime in voiceover. Because one of the main compliments this show gets is how organic and real the acting feels. It doesn't feel like standard cartoon or animation voice work. It's in the same realm as something like Beastars, where the voice work is so real it feels like real people. Kinda like an audio drama, but with visuals. Steven Yeun, J.K. Simmons, Gillian Jacobs, Walton Goggins, Seth Rogen, Ross Marquand, and obviously the great Mark Hamill are all amazing in the show, with the standout in my opinion being Sandra Oh as Debbie Grayson. I genuinely think she is the pinnacle of voice work in this show. She brings out a raw, primal human energy to a very emotionally taxing role, and she kills it every time. But while Sandra Oh is the peak of the performances in this show, the absolute worst, bottom of the barrel voice acting they got is Jonathan Banks' Grit. I know, it hurts me to say that too, and look, I loved him in Breaking Bad and Better Call Saul, but he's just awful in this show, just awful. And I know it's him and not the directing because in the same episodes where he's in, we have Steven Yeun acting his ass off. But with Jonathan Banks, it honestly feels like he's just reading lines off a piece of paper but not knowing how to add emotion to them, so he just raises his voice to see if that works. Surprise, surprise, it doesn't. I was already super scared when he got cast because of his work as Jim Gordon in Arkham Knight, but since he is talented, I was willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. But no, he's just not built for voice work. You see, a lot of people in the West tend to look down on voice acting and make it seem like it's not as good or really as hard as traditional on-screen and stage acting. And while that stigma seems to be dying down over the years, movie studios still tend to cast well-known celebrity actors as opposed to professionally trained voice actors. What makes a good voice actor isn't the fact that they can do multiple different voices. That's definitely a big part of it, and some of the best are able to do that very thing. But what truly makes a good voice actor is being able to produce a living, breathing performance with just your voice. With on-screen and stage acting, you have a lot to work with sets, costumes, practical effects. Even with big blockbusters that require a lot of green screens, actors still have many resources to work with, at least most of the time. Most of the times, they still have an ensemble cast that they can bounce off of and work with, which is why productions like The Hobbit were heavily criticized. In voiceover, sometimes you have that, and you can use the other tools at your disposal, like your hands and facial expressions, to elevate your performance. But for the most part, especially in anime, the main thing that matters is your voice. Being able to produce a natural performance with just your voice is a tricky job that not every actor can pull off. Now again, not every celebrity is a bad voice actor, but the deal with this show is that they are prioritizing including so many big name stars that most people wouldn't even know are in the show because it's animated and you don't actually see the face of the person who's cameoing, that they're leaving the animation department in the dust. While the animation has improved, some scenes still look like Flash animations. People have been making comparisons with the scenes in the show versus panels from the original comic, and they've also been comparing this show to Japanese anime like Jujutsu Kaisen and saying how those animes look so much better, despite having a fraction of the budget. And a major counter-argument to those comparisons is that, for the first one, it's a comic, so you can't really have that, even in anime. But for the second one, Japan abuses their artists and we shouldn't bring those kinds of practices over here. And while they have a very valid argument, spending millions of dollars on these celebrities that people won't recognize or don't do a good job with the voice work in general isn't a good alternative either. But that's just my personal unwanted opinion of what I think about this show. Let me know what you guys think, and yeah, that's it. Have a good day, everyone. Peace.